Welcome to another video on ABC Networking YouTube channel. My name is Tobias van Inge, and in this video I'm going to explain how you can use the H3C Cloud Lab Simulator for HPComware devices to start and set up and playing around with Netconf. Netconf is getting very popular these days to do network automation, to do integration with programming languages such as Python. So we're going to have a look how you can educate yourself and how you can set up a Netconf environment for yourself. So in this text file, you can see that I set up a couple of steps. So the first thing we're going to do is setting up and start the H3C Cloud Lab Simulator and making sure we can configure lab environment on our laptop or on other devices where we want to use this. The second step is we need to make sure we get into interface connectivity and configure IP addressing on the VLAN interface. Because we're going to use SSH and netconf over SSH, we need to make sure we have a username configured on the device. And these are a couple of steps that you can set up that you need to type in to configure this user. We also need to configure the line VTI interface. And then the last step is to making sure that we enable SSH and we configure a certain port for the SSH netconf subsystem. Default is port 830. Then we're going to start Python, and in Python we're going to use the NC client as the netconf client. It's a very popular netconf client inside Python. A couple of steps further, as you can see, we're going to do more in Python just to give you a couple of examples how you can start playing with CLI commands or using dedicated netconf objects to configure or retrieve information from the device. So before we're going to do that, I want to show you where you can download some important information. So this link, it's posted in this video also, is where you can download the HP Network Simulator. If you click the download now button, you get to this page, and on this page you can see that we support multiple versions there in Windows 7, 32, 64-bit, Windows 8, but also Ubuntu. If you think that you more like the VSR to play around, so the VSR is the virtual router, you can also use that. And on this ABC Networking YouTube channel, you can also find some videos on how to set up the VSR. And the VSR can be downloaded on this link, where if you go down, you can get a free demos version of this VSR and play around with the virtual router and use the virtual router to play around with Netconf and set up your environment. As said, we're going to use the NC client. This is the ncclient.org page. It's the Python library for Netconf client, very popular, very used. And since version 0.45, besides the Cisco and Juniper device handles, there is now also Huawei, Alcatel Lucent, but also these two, H3C and HPComware. In this example, because we're using a simulator, we're going to use the H3C, but of course when you have HPComware devices, you can also use the HPComware device handler. So that's now fully supported in NC client, so that's really great. So let's set up our environment first. So this is H3C Cloud Lab. It's a graphical page. So what we want is we want to have a device here. We're going to drop that. We want to have a host because we need to communicate the host. That will be the local PC. And we need a link between these. I'm going to select manual now. I want to use my virtual host only network adapter, and I'm going to connect it to interface 01. So that's all the steps. It's very simple, very easy. Everybody can do it. And then if you right click the device, you can start the interface. Anything if you want to see if you really connected the interface correctly, just press this button and you can see the interface names. So right click, let's start the device. Now it's using a VirtualBox to start the devices. With a right click, we can start the CLI, and a PuTTY image will be, or a PuTTY display will be showed. I'm going to change the settings here to make sure that we get the right behavior and you can read it correctly on the video. Okay, so it's a little bit better. I'm going to Control D this, and we're going to into system mode and making sure that we can see the interface is connecting correctly on 1/0/1. You can see that the interface is up. So let's go into the VLAN interface 1 because we want to have IP address DHCP allocated to making sure we get IP connectivity here. Display IP int brief. So we don't have an IP address yet. So let's give it a couple of seconds to get an IP address. And there we go. The IP address is 192.168.57.102. So let's set up this local user to making sure we can have SSH communication for Netconf and maybe also if you want to do management on it. So let's set up the username. That's command is local user. I'm Tobias and I'm giving the class manage because I wanted to have a manage user. I'm going to password simple, HP rocks. Then I'm going to give it a service type SSH because that's the service type I need to use. Authorization attribute because I also want to configure and maybe using certain CLI commands, so I want to give it an authorization network admin. That's the user. And I also want to make sure that we can service type. Oh, sorry, I need to give it use Adobe's service type. As you can see, you can also let's do all. You can also specify netconf separately. An authentication type will be password. Then we need to configure the VTI. So let's do all of them. Authentication mode scheme. And protocol inbound will be SSH. Then we need to configure, let's go back one level, netconf SSH server. And we configure the port to 830. That's the, if SSH logs in, it logs into that subsystem. So in that SSH subsystem for netconf. And we going to enable netconf, enable. So now we have saved everything. We have configured netconf. We have set up the user, making sure we have IP connectivity. Let's go to our fighting client. Maybe first we want to see if we can at least ping the device. And we got a reply so we can ping the device. So let's go to our fighting client. In order to make sure we can use NC client, we need to import it. So from NC client, we're going to import manager. So that's being done. And in order to make it a little bit more easy for myself, I'm going to copy paste this. So what I do here is, let me see if I can make this visible. Show this also in the screen. Is I'm going to set up a connection object here to that device. And as you can see here, that it logs in successfully with Adobe as an SSH. So now I create an object, NM, that is connected via SSH and it's using the device parameters H3C there, as you see. So we remove this. So let's first have a look. As you can see, there is an object created here. And if you do a dir on this object, you can see that we have multiple get configurations. We have a CLI. We can do dispatching. There's multiple options we can use against this object to do something. So let's, for example, first start to see if we can push the CLI command via netconf. So in order to do this, I'm first going to create a variable. That makes my life a bit easy. As you can see, and I have execution here um, as the text, and then I'm going to copy this on that object. You see I'm doing .cli and then the variable. And as you can see, I got a Netconf RPC reply here with display IP interface, and you can see that it gives me some information here. If I want, I can also retrieve all the VLAN information. So let's, for example, set up another variable here with some of the netconf tags. Of course, there are multiple ways in doing this, but this is, I think it is good for education, because you see how you're going to build up the netconf packet here. And then in this case, what we're going to do is we do an nm get. So that's my object. We're using the get. We're going to look in the subtree, and then we're using the VLAN filter as filter. So let's see. As you can see, we got VLAN 1, the name, we got the indexes, untagged port list. So we got all the VLAN information back. But let's say we want to do more, right? We also want to add a VLAN. So we create that variable again, and instead of now doing adding or getting, we're going to use edit config, and I will give you a little bit of explanation. So first, let me see. We do nm on the object dot edit config. Then we're going to open brackets, and we say, okay, the target will be the running config. The config is add VLAN, so that's this variable that we created here. So we are going to use this information, and the default operation will be replaced. So there are multiple options. We will look at that later. As you can see, we got an RPC reply packet. Okay. So now, instead of retrieving all the VLANs, what we did in this example here is where we subtract VLAN filter. You can see we didn't provide any VLAN ID here, so we said, okay, retrieve all the VLANs, but there was only one configured. You can also retrieve a certain VLAN information. So let's create another variable. And as you can see, I'm now providing the ID of 101. So I only want to retrieve the information of VLAN 101. So I don't want to see the VLAN information of 1. So what we're going to do, we're going to do the get here. Again, we're going to use the subtree, and we're going to use a VLAN filter 101. And as you can see, we got a reply message back with only the information of VLAN 101. So if we go back to the other example where we were using the subtree information of this one, is where we're using all the VLANs. As you can see, we got VLAN 1 and 101. So this way you can also be very specific in the information that you want to retrieve. So as you can see, this feedback is not really nicely readable. So let's going to see if we can make this printing of this retrieving information a bit more pretty. So for example, let's retrieve all the information here. Let's put it into a variable, data all, for example, and we're going to use nm .get, and we want to retrieve all the information. So all information is retrieved. Let's have a look. As you can see, this is not really readable. So let's import XML dom.minidom, and we can use this to parse this and to print out more XML information. So let's create a variable x where we can say data all.xml. Okay, so now create another variable called XML, and what we do is we're going to use this parse string and we're going to put that XML data into the other variable, and then we're going to create the last variable, pretty XML, as XML to pretty XML to pretty XML square bracket. And what we can do now is print pretty XML. As you can see, this is better readable, but still, there is a lot of information in here. So what if we want to search for information? So we can import RE, that's the regular expression library. For example, let's say items, and we want to do re.find all. We open and I want to search on all OSPF information. Star dollar, and then I want to search in pretty XML, and I want to search multi-line. So now for X in items, we say print X. And this way you can just retrieve certain information using regular expressions. Of course, this is a very simple example of using regular expressions, but you can make more complicated one. So let's do a little bit more a different example of how, for example, to create an OSPF instance. If you have an underlay spine environment or spine leaf environment as underlay, or a campus environment, and you want to achieve a certain automation level. So again, I'm going to create a variable. This time I'm going to create it at OSPF. It's a config variable, and I will explain it when I pass it in here. So as you can see, at OSPF, the right URNs, and then I'm going to create an instance 100. This will be the router ID. That will be wrong. So let me change that. This will be the router ID. So let me pass this in again. So this will be the router ID, and as you can see, I created instance name 100. So what you now do is, in that instance name, I'm going to create an area. So in that area, I refer back to the name 100, and in there I create an area ID. And then I'm going to add networks, but also first I'm going to reference to the instance 100 an area ID, and in that area ID there's a network address with a wildcard mask. So you see that with this Netconf setup, you constantly can refer to the instance, configure something in the instance, then refer to the instance and area ID, and then you configure, for example, in this case, networks. Okay, so let's do this configuration. We're going to use our edit config again, and then the target will be the running config, and then the config is at OSPF as we just created, and thus we just using the default action. Okay, we got an RPC reply back. Okay, so let's just for fun have a look on this switch, display current, and as you can see, we created OSPF 100. So if we want to retrieve this OSPF information, we can create an OSPF filter as we did for the VLANs. Passed. And we can use this nmget command, refer to the subtree, and then use OSPF filter. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm missing a bracket. As you can see, we're going to retrieve the OSPF areas, name 100, and all the information that belongs to this OSP area. Then the final thing that we need to do is, and I'm close, because we need to close the session off nicely. And let me show you the console of the switch again. And we close the session. As you can see, I'm disconnected. So I hope this gave you a very brief example in how you can set up your own lab environment and start to playing around with Netconf and educate yourself on Netconf. HP also created a really nice library, a Python library that you can use to uh, do all these things much more easier from an automation perspective. And therefore you will see on the ABC Networking YouTube channel that we're going to create a few series of these, like let's say network automation tool that I think will be very handy to educate yourself on as a network administrator in this DevOps environment, or just to make your life easier. So thank you very much. Hope you liked it, and hope to